welcome to the Blake Edwards podcast. I am your humble and gracious host, Blake Edwards, and today we have on a very special guest today. Her name is Lanika Schaefer, and she is a realtor broker out here in the city of Tampa. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's so good to see you
It's
again.
good to see you as well. And I was really excited just to really do this episode just because of our early history when I came out here. And for most people that don't know, it's when the pandemic had really hit is when I had got introduced to really you and George, because I was looking for places to stay out here in the city of Tampa, and I was Airbnb-ing at your place. And again, thank you for really just inviting me in. It was just it was an awesome experience. Awesome Airbnb too. I really had fun there as well. And then just also getting like a lot of advice and information from you guys was just unbelievable. I really enjoyed my experience when I was out with you guys.
Yeah, of course. You became family. You stayed with us.
No, definitely.
I mean, we didn't have like the traditional 3-day stay. You were with us for so long that when you left, we were sad.
Definitely. And it was just funny. Like, I feel like that was kind of not an odd time in my life, but I didn't have a car, and my job was all the way out in the city, and I had my electric scooter.
I forgot about that.
Right. So
and then it broke, and we got another one delivered.
Right. That was a whole debacle. I was just like, ugh. But like I was not for paying like $20 for like an Uber back and forth. Like
No.
It would take up like probably half of my check at the time. So I was just like, let me get a scooter. And the ride wasn't even actually that bad. It was probably like 20 minutes to get there and 20 minutes to get back. But
As long as we don't hit the rain, it's a pretty friendly scooter city.
Right? And as often as I did, 5 days out the week and driving back there and forth, I only probably got caught up in the rain once when I was down there.
I forgot all about that.
Right. It was crazy. But yeah, that was really the main reason why I was just excited to do this episode. So, but kind of one of the first questions I wanted to ask you is kind of what's your background? Because I know you're a realtor at a brokerage down here. And so kind of what's your background and how did you get into that space?
Well, it's a long story, super convoluted, and literally from the start point to the end point, it's just a huge mess. I'm from Japan. I grew up in Japan, graduated high school out there, and then bounced around to college, and ended up dropping out after my second year. Had Siggy, who you've met. And I was kind of in the same position you were with your scooter. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know how I was gonna feed my kid. That story gets kind of like dark and deep, and it's, I got to a point as a mom where I was like, okay, I need to figure out how I'm going to take care of a child. I had numerous jobs. I was a phlebotomist for a while. I worked for a doctor. I bartended. And I actually was a bartender at a strip club for a long time.
Oh, really?
I loved it. Loved it. It was so much fun. But those hours and that lifestyle is just not cohesive with being a mom. I mean, it was really tough to work till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, drive back, be there to, pack lunch, take her to school. So my parents bought a house, and their realtor was a great guy, and my dad's like, you know what, my daughter would be really good at this job, maybe you should, could she come talk to you about it? And he's like, yeah, sure, okay. And it kind of just started from there, and that same person is now my business partner today.
Oh, wow, nice.
So, yeah.
So, you said you're from Japan, or is that where your parents are from, or where are they from?
No, so just like that story and everything else in my life, very confusing. Lanika is Dutch and Hawaiian. I'm neither Dutch nor Hawaiian. My mom's from the Philippines, and my dad is American, and I grew up in Japan because my dad was in the Air Force for 30 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So he was stationed out there?
Yep.
No, it's funny you say that because my brother, he's ex-Air Force, but he was stationed out in Germany, and he spent majority of his time actually just in Germany, because I know, I'm not sure if they call it tours out there, but that's where he was stationed for, I think, 2.5 years. But then he ended up coming to South MacDill,
very cool.
right here in Tampa. And it's funny. That's actually why I ended up really just coming down here for school, because
Same here.
I was visiting my brother, and this was at the time when I was graduating from high school, and I just came down here for a trip to stay with him. And we were riding by the school, and I was like, oh, that's a really nice place. And then we ended up touring the actual place and looked at all the programs, and fate had led me to University of Tampa, so
Well,
that's the main reason why I went out there.
well, that's awesome. And I mean, you're obviously an intelligent guy, so to get into UT is a feat in itself.
No,
So,
exactly,
I
definitely.
mean, that's awesome.
Now, you have sold over $10 million worth of real estate and $6 million in pending.
This year.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like that in itself just sounds amazing. Like when you hear that, like, kind of, because that, I mean, that really is a big accomplishment, I'm sure, in like the realtor space. So like, how did you get to that point? Was it a lot of hard working hours? Like, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, of course, nothing good in life comes easy. 10 million is definite. I mean, 10 million, year to date is a huge feat. I think to sustain a decent living as a realtor, you want to hit 3 million. And I mean, you're living comfortably there. You're making a decent amount of money, and you're busy enough that you feel like you're working and making that money. But 10 million is, I mean, that was a goal I wanted to hit since I started.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. Like,
Thank
that's just
you.
I'm sure, obviously, the numbers are just going to keep growing. Like, you never really end up stopping. You just kind of grow, and I'm sure, just being in the business.
Yeah.
But 10 months ago, you did get into a big car accident within this year, and I just thought it was crazy because I saw you had posted, like, you had all these kind of trials and tribulations throughout this year. You got in your car accident and had different surgeries, and this was also your biggest year in terms of just business. So how have you been managing the two between each other?
It's funny how life kind of works, because prior to the accident, I thought I was on track for my best year ever. I was making a very good amount of money, finessing the system within real estate, like finding off-market properties, selling them to these buyers that I had that weren't necessarily looking until they found the right one. So I was doing that a lot of the summer, and of course, when you bring your own buyer to a seller, you typically make a little bit more of the commission because there's not another agent to split it with. So it was a great year, and right in the middle of that, I was in a car accident. And it was kind of a freak accident because the damage to the car wasn't bad. It just happened to be the way I was situated in the car at the time of impact. And that led to a brain injury, like a TBI, so traumatic brain injury. And I lost my depth perception. So I lost my depth perception. I lost my peripheral vision. I had short-term memory loss, which is extremely convenient. Because you almost don't remember pain or being hurt because you forget about it, a little bit later. So it was a tough couple months with rehab. I had to see a neurologist twice a week and just go through little things to get my memory back. And of course, being able to juggle multiple things in the real estate world is pretty much what I'm paid to do. So I couldn't do that. And the stress of not being able to contribute to my job was, another stress, along with like I had spine surgery 3 months ago. They went in, they actually took a piece of my spine out.
Oh, wow.
Modern medicine is incredible because you get really, people say back surgery and you think you're just going to be done.
Crooked for the rest of your life.
Right, and it was a fairly quick procedure, and I think 2 or 3 weeks later, I was kind of back to moving like I should. But it was it was a very difficult time, and I think that's what pushed me into it pushed me to work harder and to get over those hurdles a lot quicker, because then I went into January of 2021, and from there it was, I don't think I've slept a full night since then.
Well, it's definitely glad to see that you're still like up and running and you're much healthier. I'm sure you are feeling much better than
so much better.
That's awesome. But one of the things I did want to ask you though is because one of the kind of common misconceptions I feel like people get just about real estate and being a realtor, being an agent, doing that kind of work, like, because when people see it on TV and they see it on YouTube, it's a very like quote unquote sexy job. But a lot of the time when you meet the actual realtors and the brokers that do the actual work, they're like, it's more than just actual what you see on TV, like all the commissions, selling the house and all that. So can you kind of speak to kind of what it is that a realtor actually does, and the stuff that's kind of behind the scenes that people don't see. Because a lot of the time people, they see the end result, they see the commissions, and they see that, oh, you sold the house and you really just contributed to someone's really, because oftentimes when people are buying a home, or if you're working like in that space, you're working with people who are making really their first big investment in life, because it's either usually college or a car or a house. So kind of, how can you speak to that kind of environment?
Yeah, for a lot of people, this is the single most expensive purchase they are going to make. Um, it's funny because it is easy to fall into that grandiose, glamorous idea of what selling real estate is from, you know, any kind of TV show. And of course, I think I'd be lying if at the back of my head I was like, oh, yeah, I've watched $1 Million Listing. I could do that. And
Zing.
yeah, and that's definitely not how it works. And it's actually selling houses like you see them sell on, you know, those luxury listings are a lot more difficult in a different sense. You know, bread and butter for, at least for me and in this Tampa market, is anywhere between 300,000 to, you know, 500,000. That's a good, I mean, that's, people can afford it, and you can turn those over a lot quicker than, you know, say a $5 billion home. But my job, you know, and it's so funny because with technology nowadays, it used to be, oh, let me show you, let me do this research, let me see what your criteria is, and I'm going to be the matchmaker. I'm going to find this house for you, and you're going to love it, and you're not going to be aware of all the other options out there, because you're only going to see what I give you. With things like Zillow, with the internet, I guess, just in general, a lot of the times my clients send me the house that they want. So that takes out, you know, the searching and the research for a specific property for my clients. Nowadays, it's more of negotiation and how to make somebody, you know, how to make two people come together, essentially, because that's, you know, a lot of people get confused and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to win this negotiation. You know, the idea isn't to beat you in a negotiation. The idea is to walk away and feel like we've both won.
Of course.
So, and it's, you say of course because you know, you understand, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people lead with ego, and that's always a big thing to kind of overcome. But the majority of my job is just kind of facilitating this ride and keeping them within the parameters of how buying a house works. You know, I'm going to let them do what they feel right, or if they're like, no, if they're selling the house, no, Lanika, we really want this amount of money for it. Okay, well, let's list it there, and the market's always going to dictate whether or not it's too expensive. If it's too expensive, they're not going to get a lot of showings. Then we can start there, and a lot of people need to see that. So they'll see it, and they're like, okay, you're right, let's maybe take a little bit off and see where we go from there. So I'm just there to kind of hold the hand of the person. And, you know, especially with buyers, like you mentioned, it's a big investment. A lot of people don't see them as investments, but it is a big purchase. It's nerve-wracking, and it's such an important purchase in everybody's life. So it's nice to be there to kind of show them, you know, the way.
No, definitely. Have you seen an actual change in kind of how the culture is moving, as far as, because I know there was a real big wave of like ownership, and people need to own their homes, and people have different opinions on like what people should do financially in terms of like making these big purchases, but because there is this one side of people where you should own your home and get equity in the home, and there's another side where there's like you should rent until you could have enough money to pay off a house fully. But I mean, most people just don't have like half $1,000,000 just to plop down on a house, you know what I mean? So like, what's your kind of take on the ownership or renting? Like, what should someone who's 24, 26-ish, or maybe even in their 30s, should they be looking to do? Should they be looking to buy a home or rent? Like,
if anybody ever came to me with that second statement that you made, I would laugh in their face. Mainly because you have to think about it. If you're renting, you're throwing money away. So the statement of, oh, well, rent until you can afford to, you know, buy your house out, you'll be renting for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
And in the meantime, you know, you'll never get that money back when you rent. I always make this argument for all of my clients is that if you have, if you have a decent amount of, you make a decent income, and you've got a decent credit score, there really isn't a reason that you should not buy. Because if you're going to rent, and the amount of money you're going to spend on a rental, you'd be surprised on what that's going to be able to afford you in a home. So I have friends all the time, and I ask, well, what do you pay for your 1-bedroom or studio apartment here? And they, $2,800. I'm like, well, we bought our home for over $400, and our mortgage is a lot less than what you're paying.
I believe
and
it.
we've got 3,200 square feet. We've got a decent sized home for 2 people. And so the other argument people say is, well, I don't know if I'm going to spend time. I don't know if I'm going to want to retire in Tampa. Okay, you're 25.
Right.
Why are you thinking about retirement?
Exactly.
You're never looking for your forever home. You're looking for your right now home. And so to those people that are like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to stay in Tampa forever, that's fine. You're aware of our stance on real estate mainly is that if you're not going to live in it, somebody else will live in it.
Exactly.
And they'll pay for your mortgage. So that's an additional savings account is how I explain it to people and it's, not only is the property itself going up in value, but the amount you can ask in rent is also going up.
Exactly.
The busier the city gets. George has a rental property that I think the mortgage on it is $1,600, a little townhouse, and we're getting $3,000 a month for it.
Exactly.
Somebody's paying our mortgage, paying the taxes on it. We're walking away with, additional income. And when we turn around and sell that house, we're getting all that money back.
Exactly.
So it's, if you're never going to get that when you're renting. And it just seems like such a silly reason. I mean, I can understand if, the cons to that is, when you do buy a house, you do have to put additional money down. But there are loans out there where you only have to put 2.5% down. So it always makes sense to purchase a home.
No, definitely. I feel like just in today's society mainly, where the common miscommunication is just among the masses is that because we are living in the information age, you know what I mean?
Right.
And there's so many different places you could take information from, and people have different advice from different sources. So I mean, like when we are living in this time, you don't really know like who to really listen to, because if you're listening to an opinion of someone who says always rent until you could do this, and then you hear someone say that, oh no, you should own your home, like I could see where the common miscommunication is, or just a misinformation of knowledge in terms of that aspect. So I feel like that's probably the main reason for that. But
and I misspoke. This market we're in right now is just unbelievably crazy. Prices for homes have gone up drastically, and it's almost to a point where I do suggest to my clients, like let's wait, let's let this market cool off a little bit, because you run into am I going to pay top dollar for this property? And if you're going to pay, people are going, $10,000 over what the house is going to appraise for. And you don't really, unless you absolutely love the house, it doesn't really make sense to do that, because you're walking into a negative equity position. So the idea, for me, I'm winning if I can get my clients a house that they could sell a year from now and make money.
of course.
I never want them to sell at a loss. And that's kind of, so I could understand renting in this market and waiting until it cools off, because it's been absolutely crazy.
Now, how long have you been a realtor here in Tampa for?
I think I'm going on my 7th or 8th year now.
Okay, so have you seen a change in how the market down here has been? Because like in Atlanta too, like Atlanta is like a hot market. That's
right
where I'm from. Have you? And I'm starting to hear like Tampa is starting to be like a real hot like real estate market down here. Have you seen that change, or has it always been like that down here? It's just more publicized now.
Over the last, since I started, it's really, it's really grown. I constantly, if not on a daily basis, kick myself for not purchasing, 7 years ago, where you could buy a decent house for $150,000, and it doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, and actually this huge, since, the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup, the first time around, the Super Bowl, all the great things Tampa is contributing to, there's been a huge influx in people coming down. Coronavirus did a lot for the economy too, because people from up north were moving down south.
Exactly.
So I'm sure that's the same thing in Atlanta. But it has been absolutely crazy, and it's a tough market. It's almost not fun at a certain point because it's so cutthroat. If you have a buyer, it's constantly, coming up with a new way to make your offer more, I guess, desirable than another agent's. If you got a listing, you're just bombarded with, hundreds of offers, and it's not fun.
I believe it. Now, one of the things I did want to ask you, because I think another common misconception in kind of just the real estate market and kind of how it is played is that most people think just because you hop right into it, you're going to be making a lot of money right off the bat, like because it's real estate. But I mean, people don't understand like the actual work, branding you actually need to put in to get to a certain point. So can you kind of speak to kind of how long that process took for you to actually start making like good money, or how was that journey for you when you first hopped in?
So my first year, I made $10,000.
Oh wow, okay.
And the saying, like, it takes money to make money, I never really understood it until I was in this business. It's a very, very tough. It's a very tough industry. Mainly because there are so many realtors. I don't know what the statistic is, but I think it's almost like 200,000 people in Florida have their real estate license. Doesn't mean that they actively practice, but it's still, that means everybody is your competition.
Exactly.
So it is very, very difficult. When I moved here, I didn't know much about Tampa. And I had other jobs. By the time I got into real estate, I still didn't know anything about Tampa. So it's another one of those things where everything has to be a strategy. My going into it and not knowing anything was, realtors do these things where you can buy leads, essentially. Anytime anybody's on Zillow, if they see a house and they click like, oh, I want more information, what that does is it goes to a realtor, a random realtor, not the listing agent. It just goes to a realtor who paid to advertise in a certain location. So as we were talking about watching the times change, when I started out, you could buy Zillow leads, because that was a big one, for an EBOR, which was considered the hood. You could buy them there for like $3.
Really?
Today, you can buy them for $125.
Yeah, that's definitely a big change.
when we talk about the inflation.
Right.
So when I first started out, I didn't have it. So I had to be strategic in everything I did. And I, thought, well, eBoard's got cute little houses. And when people are shopping, everybody wants a deal. So what I did was I bought, 100 leads in eBoard. Because my thought process was somebody's going to click on a cheap house in eBoard because they're always going to look for the deal first.
Yep.
I'll show them that house and I'll say, you know what? This might not, if you're looking for a neighborhood where your kids can play around, let the dog out, why don't we transfer to like Seminole Heights? And so what that did was solidified a lead. So now I just spent, because I could buy a lead in Seminole Heights, but it would have cost me, $75 a lead opposed to $3. So I took this $3 lead and I made it a $75 lead.
Wow.
And it worked. If you could get them on the phone talking and you could show them and meet them at one house, it worked every time.
Wow, nice.
And then the other thing I noticed was buyers are a lot younger. They don't want to pick up the phone. So I started texting everybody.
Oh wow.
As soon as I received like a notification like, oh, you got a new lead, I text them. Doesn't matter what time of the night it was, because they're awake. I didn't want to let, in this, we spoke about our ADHD. In this, time, you've got 5 minutes to kind of capture their attention.
Exactly.
And so I would text instead of call. I would text them at midnight. I would text them at 2 a.m., whatever time. Because if they didn't want to text me back that late, it's fine. They thought I was a robot or an automatic message, which is fine, but at least I responded. And so that worked in my favor a lot.
I believe it.
And so the sphere of influence is something they teach in real estate school. Is you want to work the people you know. Those are, referrals. Those are the ones that are going to feed you. When I started out, I didn't know anything about Tampa. I didn't know anyone in Tampa. So I cultivated these leads doing it that way. It wasn't until a few years later that those people then started turning around and they're like,
Calling you
hey,
back.
yeah, I want to sell my house now. And those turned into, there's maybe one client I had that I don't think will ever call me back. But besides that, I think I'm fairly positive that a majority of my clients will call me back to sell their house or buy a new one. They refer me out, and I don't buy leads anymore because of that. Which
So you
is,
mainly just move off of referrals now?
it's all my work is referral based.
Nice. Okay.
Which is awesome because the need to brand yourself or be known isn't a priority when you have just this huge like referral network.
Word of mouth. Gotcha.
Right. But that's taken years. It's years. I said like the first year I made $10,000. You can't live off. I was also working at the bar I was living with my parents. I had my daughter. I was working at a bar, and I was trying to make real estate work, and I made $10,000. And I worked my ass off.
I believe it.
I think I had one client. My first client. I worked with them for 5 months, to sell them a condo for $80,000.
Oh, wow.
So when I did the math, I worked for like a quarter an hour or something. But they called me back 3 or 4 years later to sell that condo, and then they called me to sell their mom's condo, and I wish them happy birthday every
Nice.
June. So it's and that was I got that first sale, then it kind of started slowly moving. But like I said, I made $10,000. I think the next year, and it's just kind of the snowball effect. You have to kind of, keep your eyes on the prize, keep your chin up, and just keep moving forward, keep moving forward. Obviously, I met George because I was his realtor. And that one worked out really well for me.
Shout out to George, too.
So, even now I'm my 7th year, 8th maybe. And it's finally to a point where I feel like all that hard work has cultivated, and it's, hard work in the job, being the best, making yourself, because the job's not hard. The job itself is not very difficult. So sometimes I run into people and I'm like, God, I don't know how you could be making money, because it's, because you run into just some
Characters along the way.
For a lack of a better word, I don't know.
I believe it.
But so the job's not hard. It's just the tenacity and how hard you're willing to work.
Now, like, since you've been working like in this market down here, do you think majority of people that you actually work with, when they want to get into real estate, are they looking for homes for themselves, or are you finding a lot of people that are looking for investment properties to get like cash flowing properties? Like, what percentage of those clients that you meet want to have the actual real estate as their primary residence, or like as an investment property?
So that's changed a lot over time too. So there's real estate, and then within real estate there's commercial, then there's residential, of course. But now I focus a lot on residential, and within that residential market we see people that want investment properties. And then within those investment properties, what do they want to do? Are they going to be rentals? Are they going to flip the property? And then on the other side is, yes, I want my home. I want to live in it. This is going to be my primary residence. And now we've seen this kind of merge of this house needs to be like with our home, this home needs to have 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, because what we plan to do with it is make it our primary residence, but also Airbnb out, or VRBO one of these bedrooms or 2 of these bedrooms. So we've kind of seen that be a huge change within this real estate world. And within all of that, they're kind of their own own niches. You really focus on if you're an investor and you're working with investors, it's a lot different than working with primary residents and new homeowners, because there are different strategies to getting the house. You're looking for different things when it comes to a house. It doesn't really technically have to, it has to have a roof, but the roof could be leaking and you know,
Of course.
that's fine. You can sell it as an investment. You can't sell somebody that house to live in. So I focus more on primary residence, Airbnb properties, and occasionally I will get investors. So it's funny how there's so many little like subsections of what you do in real estate. And that's, and I know that you're getting into real estate. So not only is there, the real estate agent, there's also other jobs within real estate
Exactly.
and so I could talk forever about it and then I would get distracted and forget what the question was.
No, of course. No, but so one of the things I did want to ask you though, because I think most people, like when they hear the idea of you're living in your own home and you're renting out different rooms within your home, like that could kind of get uncomfortable. But I mean, just even the time that I was there, like it seemed like you guys just had like just fun doing it, like because people would think, oh, I can't live comfortably in my own home. Like, no, like you and George would be up like in the middle of the night, like at 12 o'clock, just
like
playing
beating
games.
each other.
Like just hanging out and playing around. So I'm just like it actually, at least from my perspective, it looked pretty enjoyable. But did you guys ever have any times where you guys are living with someone and it wasn't all fun, or like how has that experience been for you?
So hosting is definitely an art. And so the way entrepreneurship in itself is kind of funny. I think people are born with that drive to be an entrepreneur. George, some of us are, forced to be an entrepreneur. So they kind of, you hit some point in your life where you're like, oh shit, I gotta figure this out. And that's me. George, from the time he came out of the womb, was looking for a way to make $1,
Right.
and he is so good at it. So I became a host through association, and when George wanted to do it, I was like, I have a kid, I have Sagri, how safe is this going to be? All the questions that any normal person would ask. Which went in one ear out the other with George. He's like, yeah, but they pay our mortgage and, then we live here for free.
Right.
So I'm like, that sounds great, but, also I don't want to get knifed in the middle of the night.
Definitely.
But we've done it where we've hosted in our house, and usually people, if they read the whole listing, they know they're staying in a home with other people. We've had them show up and they're like, are you guys going to leave? And we're like, no, no.
Should have read the details.
Right. We're like, no, also, where do you think you're going to rent this house for $30 a night?
Right, exactly.
So it's people that know that they're doing like a shared space are a lot more open. I'm an introvert. So I don't like, contrary to all of this, I am an introvert. I like my own space, so I'm not the person that would do a shared space.
Definitely.
People that are a little bit more open to, are just a little bit more open in general, so they're nicer. I mean, maybe not nicer, but they're easier to talk to, are more willing to have conversations. And so it really is a reflection of our guest. I mean, and you were with us for so long. You were like family at that point.
Right.
I mean, we caught you falling asleep outside like 4 nights a week.
Oh, yeah.
We're like, is Tristan alive? And I was like, yeah, he's okay.
Right. I'll be back in a second.
Yeah, we're like, oh, okay, cool. So, I mean, it's different. We've had terrible experiences. We had a house in Ybor where we didn't live in it, but we rented it out, and people threw parties there. They broke the door. They broke the floor. They refused to leave. They were blocking the the exterior camera to get in. And it was just nightmares after nightmares, and it was not our favorite experience. But having people in our home, I think, is the new normal.
Yeah.
I don't think there was one time where the guy kind of creeped me out a little bit. But besides that, everybody, we've made great friends out of it. Like, we've got a doctor out in Arizona now. He just left us. He was with us for a year. We have our roommate now, Jess, she started off as Airbnb, and she's been with us for over a year. You, obviously, and we've got some friends up in Buffalo. I mean, like lifelong friends. Like we will, continuously stay in touch with them. And there have been people that are in and out. I couldn't even tell you their names.
No, definitely. And it was just funny, like a funny, quick little story. And so when I had first came in, right, I was like, because that was really my first time like living in a different place. Like any other time, I was either living with family, friends.
Right.
So like that was like probably my first experience doing that. And my first mind frame into going into that situation was don't break anything. And one night I was in the bathroom and that
Little
the thing
curtain,
that hangs
yeah,
on there, it fell right off. And I was like, oh my God. But it had like the little stickers on there. I think it was just from like the hot shower mist.
It was definitely.
like-
We could not find it. We still have that problem to this day,
Really?
and we're like, Jess actually stays in the bedroom. Jessica stays in the bedroom you were in. So that's her shower now. And yeah, she's like, oh, I just took it down. And apparently there were roofers on the
Yeah.
door, on the house next door. And she's like, yeah, all the roofers saw me yesterday. And we're like, well, we should fix that eventually.
Right now,
But-
it was funny because I was just like, man, George is going to kill me. Not because I was just like, I didn't even know how that happened. I was just taking a shower and it just ended up falling off. Like, I was so nervous at the point because I think I was like 18 at the time and I was just like, I don't want to
no,
get
I
kicked
broke
out. But
their
I was just like, yeah, I was like, I hope he doesn't kick me out. I didn't even say anything for a while. I was just like, I'll just take my showers at the window down. If anyone sees me, oh well.
That is so funny. I don't think we even noticed. That's so. And you were very, very, very respectable. You were quiet. My parents loved you. I told you I spoke to my dad. I was like, "Yeah, you remember Tristan Blake?" And I was, and he was like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Oh, tell him. Oh, what a nice young man. Tell him hi. Tell him I hope he's doing well." So I mean, you made an impression on our family too.
No, definitely. It was just cool too because George, we had also connected because he had went to the University of Tampa, the same university I went to, and we just had good conversations about his experience over there. So it really did feel like, I felt like I got real lucky for my first time, like as far as being on my own for a little bit and being in that atmosphere. Like I feel like I just got so lucky and so blessed to like, because it felt like very homely and family like. Like
Oh, well, that's always so
anytime
nice.
like you guys are out just sitting on the couch or playing games, I'll just be sitting on the counter eating some dinner or like watching you guys play, and we'll just have random conversations. So it was just cool, like how quickly it transitioned. Because at first I was like, oh, this is gonna be different, but then it really just was comfortable. Like a couple hours after me being there, like.
Well, and I think what we started like the beginning of the pandemic together. Now that we're kicking up all these old memories, I remember I had like an issue because I played too much Call of Duty during that time. I think I was playing for like 8 hours a day.
Right.
So yeah, we were George started working from home. Like the very beginning of the pandemic, real estate started to slow down. And so we all kind of just hung out. I think you were the first guest we had that stayed in that house that stayed with us. Actually, I think you were the first guest we had in general that stayed with us as long as you did.
Really?
So
Wow.
it was an experience for us as well, and we actually prefer it now
No,
because
definitely.
it's easier. Yeah, it's nice not to have an empty house, and it's nice not to have strangers walk in and out, because that's essentially what you're doing when you're hosting an Airbnb is opening your home up to strangers. And people that come and stay inside your house are a lot more respectful than. In most cases, we did have one incident where somebody like just smoked pot inside the front bedroom, and I feel like we need to like explain my house, because I think
Right.
everybody thinks it's like very tiny and everybody's living right there and we're all sharing one shower. But getting back to real estate, when we saw this house, we bought it because we got an awesome deal on it, but also because it was going to work out so well as an investment, because where you were tucked into the one corner of the house, you had your own bathroom.
Exactly.
The front bedroom has its own bathroom inside of it. And of course, George and I have our bathroom, and there's like a guest bathroom that nobody knows about, that Sagri uses.
Right.
And so, when we open our house to people like this, we wanted to ensure that you had your own privacy. And I think that helps a lot too,
definitely.
and making you feel like at home, because you essentially you had the other side of the house completely to yourself. And we all kind of met in the living room or the kitchen to hang
Right.
out. And it's, I think it's, for us, it's the perfect scenario. From where we for where George and I sleep was completely opposite of where you slept. We couldn't even hear you. I mean, not that you were ever loud.
Loud or anything.
No, you were never loud. Now they think we're like, is Tristan a lie?
Right.
Should I poke him? Like, but it's it's kind of like the new normal. I have clients that we have Hillsborough County where Tampa is located, and then Pinellas where St. Pete is. So depending on where you're at, I mean, there's Pasco, Manatee, there's a bunch of different counties, of course, but depending on which county you're looking for real estate in depends on your ability to, use it as a short-term rental. And that's been another issue. So St. Pete, like Treasure Island, that area, they've really fought against using any of their properties as Airbnbs. So, we've got to keep an eye out for that when we're selling. But it's definitely becoming a very, very popular thing nowadays.
No, definitely. I mean, if you could have that luxury of being able to Airbnb out your home, I would think, at least to me, it makes the home more valuable for the actual homeowner, because then they have different options, whether they want to Airbnb it out or live in it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it just adds value to the actual concept of, like, it's a package that comes with the home. You know what I mean? Yes,
which is tricky when you're selling real estate because you can't value your home as a business. So I can't say, let's rough numbers. Oh, our Airbnb makes us $3,000 a month. So we need to be able to sell our house for at least $750,000 in order for us to feel like we've made a profit. The bank's going to go, well, because a majority of people are going to finance. The bank's going to go, well, your house isn't worth that much, so you can't sell it. So we actually see that happen a lot too, where people are valuing their real estate as a business opposed to a residential home, and it is causing an issue. So we've thought, well, is there a way that a bank can, a mortgage, you can write a mortgage, or a lender. I don't know, the institute. Obviously, lending is not my strong point. That's not what I do. But is there something is there a loan that exists that allows you to kind of bridge that gap and say, hey, I do plan on using my home as a business, and it has, it has a profit and loss statement of X amount. It's bringing in this much money along with the actual value of the property. And see, this is just, one of those little.
It's a gray space.
It really is, and it kind of just another way that real estate kind of sprawls out into a whole different, subject, and it's wild. So it's constantly changing, and I think that change we've seen a lot of in the last probably 5 years. Younger homeowners, those younger homeowners are always looking. Like, our generation is super smart.
Yeah. We have all the information.
It's unbelievable. I would say a majority of my clients are also under 50. I mean, maybe I would go so far as to say a majority, not all, but a majority of my clients are under 40.
Okay, cool.
So it's new money. Or, and it's money in the sense of just being savvy, not rich. I mean, I say kids, but
just working with what you got.
Yeah, I mean, it's so smart, and it just blows my mind all the time that I'm like, I don't have to explain why this is a good financial decision. They already know.
They already get it.
Yeah, they got it. They just want to buy a house. So I'm like, okay, perfect. So yeah, it's funny how short-term like Airbnbs and VRBOs has changed the real estate market.
No, definitely. Now, since you've been in real estate, have you had anyone, like a figure kind of to look up to, like, oh, this is who I strive to be, or have you tried to just be your best self? Like, is there any idols that you look up to in real estate that you would want to be in, or that you would want to be?
It's funny. I mean, it's funny because you watch these shows and you're like, oh, of course I want to sell this much money, and then you realize these people are tools. Like, I don't want to be like them. Like, no, thank you. Right. I think it's always important to lead with your best self, honesty, and realtors or salesmen, we have a bad rap already.
Yep.
You know, I think it goes car salesmen, realtors, and then literally everybody else is better.
Right.
So debunking that myth that I'm trying to screw you out of a commission, because I want your business in the future. I want to make sure I do a good job. I want to make sure that you are happy with, you know, your investment. I want you to call me back. I want you to call me if you have a problem. I am here I'm here for the rest of my clients' lives, essentially, and that's a gift. If
Yep.
I could be here to help facilitate every single sale in the future, I want to be. So my idea isn't just to like kick you to the door and take my money and leave.
After this first little
Right.
sale we did.
Right. I want to be here to facilitate all your transactions. And if, you know, that's why the biggest compliment is when we have a client call back. So as far as like, do I look up to any celebrity realtors? No. No, I'm trying to really put some thought into that. But I told you the story of how my parents bought a house from their realtor. My dad talked me up and was like, oh, you know, my daughter's really smart. Keep in mind, I'm over here like bartending at a titty club and, you know, trying to get my daughter to school. And I, you know, it's not that I'm not smart, but I was like, thanks, Dad. So I go in, I meet this gentleman who's my dad's age, and he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, come work with us. Little did I know at that point is there is a residual. If you sign somebody up to work with you and they sell houses, the way my brokerage works is you get 10% of their sales until they cap, which is until they make $100,000. Then, so with realtor fees is, we make a certain amount of commission, and from that commission we take to our brokerage, who's like our pimp, and our pimp gets 20% of that.
Gotcha.
Out of that 20%, 10% of that goes to whoever recruited you. So my recruiter, I'm the recruit, was my business partner now, Dennis. So Dennis, until I cap, you know, he makes 10% of what I make. And I would say he's taught me so much. He's my polar opposite. You know, he's an older male, an older white man, where I'm, you know, a younger ethnic chick.
No, I feel you.
And so we've been able to kind of bridge a lot of like generational gaps. If there are younger agents or, you know, younger clients, I usually go. If they're older, he usually goes. If they're men, he usually goes.
Right.
If they're women, they usually call me. So we've kind of been able to use that to our advantage. And he's been doing it for so long that he probably hasn't experienced a situation that he can't solve. He's very patient, and I admire him for all the attributes that I do not have. Whereas he's old school, he has those manners, he knows when to be polite, and I don't. So
Definitely.
I'm like, Dennis, I was like, that dude's talking shit. And like my vocabulary, as eloquent as I like to be, does not exist. Especially, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing, I don't know if it's just a generational thing, and I don't know if it's because of the business that I'm in. And, you know, I hate to bring it up, but also like being a woman, like I don't want to be walked all over. So if
definitely.
somebody tells me something that's incorrect, it might just be a personal thing. Because now I think about it, if George tries to tell me something that's not correct, I'm also going to fight him about it too. So I need very little reason to argue with anybody. And he balances me out a lot.
No, I feel you. And it's funny that you say that because, like, I'm kind of at the stage where I grew up cussing. And, like, I just grew up around a bunch of sailors, so I'm just so used to it. But I'm at the stage where I'm, like, thinking about, like, the brand and all this other different kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, should I not cuss as much as I do? But I'm just, like, at the point where, like, I feel like if I force myself not to try and do these things,
You're not
it's
leading
not
with
gonna
your
come
authentic
genuine.
self.
Exactly. But I'm like,
Right.
do I want to be consumer friendly in the future? Like, but it's just funny, like, because shout out to my photographer Shakir, like, he's always telling me, like, you're kind of starting from a blank canvas and you don't really know like what to paint on it. So
And you can
you're
kind of
thinking
create
about-
yourself.
Exactly, and you're thinking about concepts that you shouldn't even really be thinking about. Like right now, I'm in the creative stages where I should just be having fun with the creative and just being myself. But
And yeah, and seeing where that leads. If in
Exactly.
the future it's like, ooh, you know, maybe we should tone down on. But that's the beauty of, you know, being an individual podcast. You can kind of create exactly what you want and lead with that. I know I had a lot of insecurities, like the social kind of structure put on me was I have hand tats. I have, one on my wrist. Is, you have this idea that a realtor dresses like this all the time. Trust me, I wore sweatpants and closed a deal yesterday, and I don't think I brushed my hair. So that's me usually. And once you have these clients, they do become friends. So you do start to relax a lot when you're putting on your best impression. When you meet with clients, of course, I'm like, oh, I almost told myself, like, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't talk. Because the first word that's going to come out of my mouth is going to be a cuss word.
Right.
Always. And it's my sense of humor. And that's kind of why I enjoy having my partner with me so much, because we'll sit there and we'll talk and somebody will say something. And if it's not a cuss word, I'm like, that's what she said. And or it's something so inappropriate, and I have to keep it back. But I've learned that, we're in a luxury of getting to choose who, in my profession anyway, and I guess in your profession, you get to choose who you want to work with. So I've had clients where, and I've noticed it more now that I'm breaking into these multi-million-dollar listings, like old money or rich people, like I don't know, are totally different. It's just a different kind of. I've noticed it with old money too. There's I didn't think it existed except in like movies of like, what is it where they're, it's not bougie because it's just like.
Uptight, classy type of
Uptight,
thing.
that's a good word. Pretentious is what I'm thinking, and it does, and it's a sense of like sarcasm and passive aggressiveness that I've never been introduced to, and I enjoy watching it because my wealthier clients are my friends as well, and I watch them handle situations, and I'm like, I will never be rich.
Right.
Because I will never be able to handle myself with that kind of, restraint almost. Like I've watched just these people tear each other apart so politely, and I'm like,
Right. No.
I fought people for so much less.
No, and it's funny too, because like kind of how I look at it, just even like the podcast, and even when I get into real estate further down in the future, like let's just say if I'm a realtor and I have a client that I'm doing work for, and I'm looking at it through kind of the client's lens and perspective, do I want to work with a realtor or an agent who is kind of putting on this image to try and look as professional as possible?
They are annoying.
You know what I mean?
You're
Like,
going to spend so much time with that person. Rarely do we have somebody that is like, hey, I want to buy a house, and it's their first house. Usually it's, I'm up all night texting these clients. I'm, spending time with them. You really have to it is a really intimate experience in a lot of ways. And you do, you do know these people, and some ways a lot of people don't know them. You know their finances to a certain point. You know what their dreams are. You know what they want this home to be for them in the future. So yeah, you do. And so it's funny because people are very humans are very human. They don't want perfection a lot of the time. And it also, I've learned that going dressed up, it's also almost backfired on me in a lot of ways.
Really?
Yeah, it's if you meet with, a husband and a wife, oh, you're too pretty. They don't like, oh, okay, I'll go in my sweatpants. I'm a lot more human that way. I'm not a threat. Perfect.
And I feel you.
And then you
definitely.
just hit them with something that, makes them, and like I said, mine's a lot of referral business. So I'm coming from a good source that I'm coming from a source where they know I'm good at what I do, regardless of how I dress. And so, yeah, it's somebody you're going to spend a lot of time with. So it should be somebody you enjoy spending, or at least can tolerate.
Oh, exactly. Do you have any advice to give someone who aspires to be an agent or aspires to be a realtor at all?
I mean, patience. It takes, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. I know a big thing has been, realtors holding more than one job while they're trying to sell real estate. And I did it, I did it for the first year of my real estate career, and I had to do it. Like I had the money I was making obviously wasn't enough to feed anybody. But there is a certain point where you kind of have to rip that Band-Aid off and dedicate 100% of what you're doing to this career path. Because you can't be, because as a realtor, I give so much of my time, so much of my effort. I, maybe I'm not in my office working 8 hours a week, but I am working 12 hours a day. I'm in bed next to George and our dog and our kid, and we're all watching a movie, and I'm answering emails for clients. It's something that consumes so much of who you are that to give anything less than all of your time to this career path is almost a waste. And it's difficult because you really have to be self-driven. My paychecks solely rely on how hard I am willing to work for them. How many risks you're willing to take. I remember when I first signed up, I was unaware that not only do you pay money to take the course, pay money to take money for the course, money for the test, but also after you pass, there's association fees, there's brokerage fees, there's hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of fees. So it's another thing. It's you have to really be, maybe not 100% sure, but you have to, this money is going towards, and those fees never stop. You pay them annually.
I believe it.
But, you have to be willing to at least pursue this with some seriousness. And like we were talking about, leading with your authentic self, being that person that people want to work with, not just once, not twice, but, you shoot for being their realtor for life. And you're selling yourself. So make sure the person that you're selling is a good one.
Of course.
And it always gets better. I mean, I've had my highest highs and my lowest lows where I'm like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? I can't see myself doing this forever. And sometimes where I'm like, this is what I'll do forever. This is the best. It's my best year. And it's a constant struggle. I've had my best year this year, but that doesn't mean that next year I might only make $10,000, and what do I do then? So you have to be willing to kind of get ready for those ebbs and flows.
No, definitely.
And don't let those lows deter you. You just kind of keep moving.
Now, just even going back to what you said a second ago about, is this something that I want to do for the rest of my life? Because I think, in my opinion, it's hard for me to just kind of not stick with one. I don't like to get comfortable.
It's the ADHD.
With things. Exactly. Like, it's like for myself, like, because I want to get into real estate, be a realtor at some point, and then level up, maybe start my own brokerage, and then get on to the next thing. You know what I mean? So,
right.
How do you see your journey taking place? Do you see yourself being a realtor for the next 10, 20 years, or where do you think your journey is going to take you? And is this something that you would want to do for the rest of your life, being in real estate?
I think it's funny because you and I, our brains kind of work the same way. Is like, I need something exciting. I need it to be able to hold my attention. And I'm sure you have the lows that come along with, like, where I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Don't bug me.
Right.
Or like, I have an appointment at 3. That means I can't do anything all day until my appointment at 3. So I constantly have to have some kind of excitement, and real estate leads to a lot of excitement. Those like highs and lows I was just speaking about are what kind of, as toxic as that sounds, is like what keeps me coming back. Is like, oh, the lows, oh, the highs. It keeps it exciting enough that I think for at least the next 5 years is what I'll keep doing. I think eventually, I don't know if opening my own brokerage is something I necessarily want to do. Whatever it is, I do think it'll be real estate related, whether that's acquiring more properties and using, flipping properties or renting them out. At this point in my life, I don't think I could see myself swaying too far from this. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough, especially because so much of my life has been real estate. We not only is selling homes part of the income I bring in, but I also do property management, estate management. There's so many other, little pockets of real estate that I make money on doing, that if I'm not actively selling, I'll still be making money off of real estate in one way or the other.
No, definitely. And I like the point you made to where kind of throughout the process, there's a lot of high and lows, like in this journey and in the profession. And that's kind of the vibe I like in a sense too, because one thing I don't like is when kind of people they stay in the middle ground and they just kind of ride a wave that's not really going up or it's not going down, but it's just there. You know what I
I
mean?
couldn't
And
imagine working like a 9 to 5.
no, exactly. And I always listen to this Joe Rogan motivational speech, and it's like, and the guy that was he was having a podcast with, he was saying he would take the life of the poet, where you have these tens, but you're having these miserable ones. But I mean,
Oh, of course.
who would like, just even going back to that whole thing, who wants to just live like a life where it's just steady and it's not really exciting? Like I would love to have those days where I'm feeling great, but I mean, even the days where I am at my lowest or I'm at my ones, like it's cool. It's just it's in my opinion, it's because you get these inherent feelings in life, but it's
Yeah.
how you deal with them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
Like,
100%.
you might fall on your face. You might.
It's mindset. Like
Exactly.
my lowest lows, I don't look at them and go, God, I never, that was the worst time of my life. Oh, it was so awful. You have to kind of look at them and go, well, if it wasn't for that low, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have driven me as high as I ended up going. And I laugh because it sounds so toxic. It's like, I need those lows. I need to feel like shit in order to feel that high again. And you just go back and forth. So,
it's a feeling of being human in a sense. You know what I mean?
right, 100%. And besides that, having a kid, I get to pick my own schedule. I kind of work around that. I can be there for like PTA meetings. I can volunteer at her school. With Airbnb, if George needs me to take care of something there, there's so much flexibility that you can't be bored. I'm constantly doing something.
Now, what is it like being a mother that is working in real estate, like as far as balancing family life, home life, and things of that nature? Is it a struggle? Is it easy just planning it all? Because, of course, she has school. You want to take her to school, be able to be involved in her life and those sort of things. So what's that process like for you?
I think just in general, it's a very difficult thing. I mean, I have George, but George didn't come into our lives until Sagri was wasn't a baby, but she was like a toddler. So I had already started my real estate journey. I was already, pretty set on, I was a single mom. I was doing it. I had my parents to help, of course. But a lot of it was trial and error on myself. And it was very difficult because being a single mom and making $10,000 a year is not ideal. It's the number one thing in my life that's driven me. The lows are, a good reminder that you don't want to be there anymore, but also, having another mouth to feed and making sure that, you then become responsible for another life. And I think that's driven me. And being mindful, being a mom, nothing's a big deal unless, the worst, my friends laugh at me because I say, what's the worst thing that can happen in a situation? I was like, you could die. Like, that's kind of like how my brain works.
Right?
Like, so you're not going to die. So then, which is extreme, but my friends, my cousin, I have this conversation with her a lot of the time because she occasionally has bad anxiety. And so she can't help but overthink situations. I was like, I don't have time to overthink situations. Right. I kind of see it black and white, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? You could die. Okay, so are we going to die? No. All right, let's figure it out. And so being a mom in that atmosphere with Sagri, I kind of like know that I got to keep her alive, but I can't control the person that she's meant to be. So I'm kind of just like this border of, all right, let her be who she wants to be within this realm of reason. And without being overbearing, that kind of allows me to focus on the person I want to be as well, because it is very hard having a child at a young age and trying to figure out who you are. Because it's not just like, the job and being here and that. When I had her, I didn't know who I was. And so now I'm responsible for raising another person and trying to help them flourish into being the person that they want to be, while you're trying to flourish into being the person you're supposed to be, and juggling things like a career. You kind of learn to prioritize things. It's like, okay, what do I need to do? Feed her. Got it. So we'll feed her, make sure she goes to school. How do I feed her? You got to make money. How do I make money? What's the easiest way? And that's how I ended up bartending. It was the easiest way to make enough money to kind of sustain living.
No, I feel you.
And then I got into a point where I jumped into real estate and was like, okay, I have to make this work. I don't have a choice. Like I felt at that point, it's like I'm too, and at that point I was early 20s. I was like, I'm too old to kind of not know what I need to do. My daughter deserves more. I need to figure this out. And so that's kind of, everything else kind of falls into place once you know what direction you're going into.
Now, being a successful realtor, like in your space, I don't know because I don't have my own kid, but I just, when I think about my future, because I want to build a legacy for my future, my kids and their grandkids, and like build an empire to pass down to them. What's your kind of mentality as far as what you would want to install in Siggy, or is there anything you want to teach her, like, oh, like these are the things that could really help benefit you in life? Kind of, how do you take that approach in terms of getting advice? Because she's still relatively young, and
Yep.
she has a lot of time to grow and figure out what she wants to do in life. But how do you take that approach, and what do you kind of think about when you are thinking about her in terms of helping her throughout her journey?
I I look back on the things that I try to stay fairly mindful in a lot of ways. I look back on the things that I wish my parents would have instilled on me. And what my parents instilled on me, of course, were what all parents did. Like, school is so important. You need to go to college, this and that, all of which I didn't listen to. So, I go back and I like kick myself in the butt and go, well, I had those lows where I was like, I can't believe I didn't go to college. Maybe I need to go back. Is it too late to go back? And you and I had this conversation is there are other ways to be successful in life that aren't measured by a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
I will argue that, having that degree does open a lot more doors. And, the way I see it is, and my dad got good at explaining this to me, was no matter what you decide to do in life, you're going to have to spend that time learning it. So that time I didn't spend going to school or going to college, I didn't suffer, but I had to sacrifice a lot to get good at what I'm good at now.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, with you and your podcast, you're putting in hours and hours and hours that you would have given to school.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different route. So I think, I try to instill on Sagri like the importance of numbers, money, numbers. She's really big into, she's 8, so she's really big into her iPad, electronics. So you try to nourish and those creative ideas. Like, okay, well, these are things that you could do if you want to play with computers for the rest of your life. Like, there's this option. And so make sure that she knows there are options out there that don't necessarily mean school, and that also will lead to success.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, like, leaving a legacy, it's tough. Like, I don't know if I would want Sagri to like grow up to want to be a realtor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's like, oh, my mom was a realtor, I'm gonna do it too. Like, that's no. No. But I think, leaving her properties, showing her, showing her that purchasing is a better option. And of course, like, yeah, I want to leave her something except besides, debt.
Mm-hmm.
I never would. So yeah, you learn. But for so much of my life, it was learning how to make the money I made now last me until I made my next paycheck. So it wasn't until the recent years where I'm like, okay, now I'm saving towards, her college education if she decides to go that route. I'm trying to instill on her the importance of, following your heart, essentially, like what you do, because that's what's going to make you happiest.
Mm-hmm.
Being your authentic self. And, George and I talk about it all the time. The idea is to acquire more properties, and those are additional savings accounts we're going to have to leave our future kids. How cool would it be, I think it would be awesome to like drive down the street and be like, oh yeah, my family owns that house, my family owns that house, we own this house, we own that house. And, they don't have to be huge houses, but, to own that piece of land.
Exactly.
Which I think is just so cool. Like, my family owns so much of Tampa. Like, they owned it. Like, it's theirs. Like, they bought this land, that land, that land. And, I think that's eventually the goal.
Mm-hmm. Now, what does success look like for you? Because I know a lot of the times when people hear the word success, they think $1 million cars, $1 million homes, jets, jacuzzis, all these other different kind of things. But in my opinion, it's about family at the end of the day. I mean, you could have all those things, but you could live in a big house, but what good is it if it's not filled up with good people? You know what I mean?
100%.
What does success look like for you, and what do you try and teach even Siggy, because you want her to be successful, but what does that mean?
It's a funny question because George and I value success in different ways. We're both very similar in our entrepreneurial spirit and how and how we want business conducted, and that's why we get along so well, and also why we butt heads so much. But to me, I'm the same way, and I've always been that way. I grew up it was a very nuclear family. I have cousins that I talk to now, and my mom is one of 9. My dad was one of 3, so I do have, an extended family. But growing up, it was in the military. It was like my mom, my dad, my sister, and that was it. So it was the most important thing. Growing up, my dad was like, we could lose everything as long as we're together. It's fine. We'll figure it out. And that's kind of how I value success. To me, in this point of my life, especially this year, I am more successful than I could have ever hoped to be. We drive nice cars. We own our house. My daughter is happy and healthy. She needs for absolutely nothing. She needs literally for absolutely nothing. I think back I think back 9 years ago when I couldn't afford to buy formula for her. Now she needs for nothing, and we live we're not rich by any standard, but we live a very comfortable life considering I'm still under 30, George is just over 30, and for where we are, I'm successful. This is how I measure success. I go home, my family's fed, happy, we've got each other, gosh, knock on wood somewhere, this is the epitome of success to me. George would argue that it's not, because to him, things like family aren't synonymous with, building a business. I think for him is building a business is successful. Once his business is here, it's successful.
Of course.
So it's definitely a line in the sand within our house, but we offset each other well. So
yeah, definitely. I think it's all about really perspective at the end of the day, to be honest. But if you had a message that you could give Siggy when she's 18, when she's getting ready to start her life and either go up to college, get her license, or go to trade school, whatever it is, what message would you give your daughter?
I love you. That's it. I hope you're happy. I hope you're doing what you want to do. Don't ask me for any more money.
Definitely. No, but I do really appreciate you coming on for this episode. This is the 7th episode, and I really just do love when people support kind of the early creative stages of this journey that I am starting. So
this is awesome.
Yes, we are in a lovely studio
this
right
is
down here in the city
deal.
of Tampa. So, but do really appreciate you coming,
of course,
and
always.
Also really appreciate you just inviting me in your home and making it feel like a home when I was down
Well, when you
here
have
as well.
millions and millions and millions of viewers, I expect to be back on.
Yes, man, we'll definitely bring you back on. By that time, you'll probably sold over $1 billion with the real estate.
Thanks.
So, but this is the 7th episode of the Blake Edwards podcast. Shout out to all the moms. Shout out to all the realtors out there. Shout out to all the entrepreneurs, creators. Shout out to all the businessmen. Shout out to all the workers out there that are just working their butts off trying to make ends meet, But yeah, this is the 7th episode, and make sure y'all tune in. Also, like and subscribe this video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And this podcast is on just about all platforms, Spotify, Apple, Patreon, I believe, as well. So make sure y'all subscribe to all those outlets. And again, thank you for coming on, and hope you have a successful rest of your journey. And
I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you. But let's go. That was great.
That time went by so fast.
I know, right?